the second installment of Into the Wind with the Overwatch. So I was trying to decide if I want to do a video on rifles and then a video on cartridges or caliber, and I thought I would do kind of a little bit of introduction on both, because they kind of go hand in hand depending on what the manufacturers make. Here's an example. I was really wanting a pretty high-powered rifle for getting some long distance, but the next rifle that I really found that I wanted was a Tikka T3X TAC A1. Give me 1 second, let me grab that. So this is the rifle I wanted. I wanted a chassis rifle, but I was dead set on this rifle. Well, they didn't make this in a 300 Win Mag. So what I ended up opting for, which I'm really glad I did, it came down to either a 260 Remington or 6.5 Creedmoor. So I did a little bit of research, and I finally decided to go with the 260 Remington because you could have just a little bit more case capacity. So you could run a little bit higher, a little bit more powder, and push it out there a little bit further. Dead set on it. And then I realized I've never heard of a 260 Remington. Now, this was several years ago. I was like, not only have I never heard it, I've never seen ammunition. So I was like, I was just, the only reason I was against the 6.5 Creedmoor was because I thought it was more of a fad. It was the new popular round. So I went to the store and I looked at some different, guns, different bullets, and it was a ton of 6.5 Creedmoors, ton of ammunition, and the majority of the guns sitting on the shelf was in 6.5. So I talked to a couple people, did a little bit of research, and I was like, you know what? It doesn't make sense for me to buy a rifle that I can't buy ammunition for. So in the end, I decided to go with 6.5 Creedmoor. Bought a couple of boxes, went and shot it, and was I amazed. It wasn't just hype. I had shot a couple first round hits at 1,400 yards just right away. I mean, it was amazing. It was a struggle with the 308. So again, depending on what caliber, if they make the gun that you want in a certain caliber, you may have to decide, go with a different caliber. So first we're going to talk about, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to encourage you to, whatever rifle you have, just to save you money and kind of get the basics down, I'm actually going to encourage you first to potentially use whatever rifle you have. Maybe your dad has an old 308 or 30-06 hunting rifle, or maybe your grandfather had one. I would actually encourage you to start there because it's going to save you a bunch of money. Here's an example of that. This was my dad's hunting rifle. So just basic brown stock. I believe it's a 20-inch barrel. This one's actually a little bit thicker than those pencil barrels. He had a basic just duplex reticle. That's just the X on there, which is completely useless to me, unfortunately. But I did want to continue to kind of honor my father in my own way by using this rifle in a useful way for me. So what I ended up doing is I had to buy, it's an old school gun, so they have these weird things, these rings that like clip in and then they turn sideways and then lock down. So for this one, what I did is I went with the SWFA 12 power. This is a 308, and then it gets it essentially suited for me to do my type of shooting. So now I have a really nice old school rifle. Now, obviously it's not perfect, but it works. I can build this up. I didn't want to do that for this one. I've got other rifles, but if I wanted to, I would say, you know, borrow your dad's or your grandfather's gun. You know, he's likely got as a 308 or a 30-06, something like that. Get you a decent but fairly inexpensive scope, or if you already kind of been looking around, you know, Vortex makes some really nice scopes. Put a scope on whatever rifle you already have, even if it's a 22. I actually started my long range journey on a 22, so I'm going to start with that and encourage you to use what you already have or what you have access to. This, I mean, it's beautiful. It's kind of ugly, I know, but I cherish it. It's really awesome. And man, they really don't make guns this way anymore. Man, the thing is so smooth. It's almost like a Tika. But so that's where we will start for today's classroom is maybe use what you already have and start getting that set up. If you don't want to go that route, we'll go a different route. And that's, you'll go buy a rifle. So I think with the modern machining and everything that we have today, even the fairly inexpensive rifles shoot pretty amazing. A lot of companies, they'll say, you know, we guarantee 1 MOA. Well, 1 MOA, basically 1 inch at 100 yards. It's 1.047. Get into that into the future. That's easy. That's I don't think I've ever had a gun that didn't at least shoot sub MOA. So anything under 1.047 inches at 100 yards, even my cheap rifle. So I had I think it's a Ruger American Ranch rifle. It's in a cheap plastic stock. It's ugly. The bolt on it was fairly rough. But that was one of the only rifles that literally shot hole in hole, and it was 300 blackout. Damn, that thing was accurate. And it was like a $350 rifle. So you don't have to go spend the big bucks on, like, you know, a custom rifle or a Tika or anything like that. You don't have to go do that. The other thing is if you've got something like an AR, you can spend less money and just kind of build it up. ARs are very easy to work with. You can buy a bull barrel for a few $100s. You can do basically just a setup. You can do a 223. That's all this is, with a fast twist rate. I think this is 1 in 7, so I can shoot the heavier bullets, like the 77, 79 grains. So I basically took just the old AR I had, kind of built it up for long range shooting, and then, believe it or not, I just spray painted this. Again, went with the SWFA because I didn't want to put a ton of money into this. This one is a 12 power as well, and that's a good way to get a fairly inexpensive rifle. If you already have an AR, just build it up a little bit, a couple $100s, and now you have something set up to start some long range shooting with. Get out to a couple 100 yards, get your feet wet a little bit. I think the SWFA scopes run all day, every day, regular price, $299. And if you ask, what? Yeah. Well, the thing about these is because it's a fixed scope. So they put all the money into the reticle, the glass, all that good stuff, have really accurate turrets. So it doesn't have, it's not first focal plane or second focal plane. So it's very simple, very basic, very good. There's a bunch of new scopes that came out, but these are the ones that I like. So for very inexpensive, I actually went with a very inexpensive barrel on this one, but nonetheless shoots really good. If I'm looking to go shoot without spending a ton of money, reloading 223 or just buying a box of 223 is very inexpensive. So that's another option if you want to build one of your ARs into more of a long range rifle. The other way is going essentially, I would call this like semi-custom. So I've got a Remington Action. It's all Cerakoted and all that good stuff. I've got a 5R, turn it that way, 5R barrel on it. I've got the, damn it, I forgot what this is called. The Bell & Carlson, I think it's called like the A5, tactical A5, fully adjustable back here. This comes in and out, turns, slides up and down. This goes up and down. This is my 308. This was my rifle that my goal was going to a mile with. So I've got 60 MOA rail on here. I just overbuilt this for being 308. Obviously you can do something custom like this, but again, you don't necessarily need that. You don't need that to start out with. 308 worked really, really well for me for several years. Still works out really well. But again, if you have something like this, it's a really good way to go. You still can't go wrong with this one. So think about, what kind of rifle you're looking into. If you want to do, wood stock, chassis, AR, that kind of direction. Do some research on that. That's not really anything I can't tell you what to go get. And then look at calibers as well. So as far as calibers go, it's really going to depend on what type of shooting you're doing. So for the longest time, I would almost always recommend the 308. It's a really good caliber. There's bullet weights all the way from 110 up to, they go up to 330s, but that's not necessarily for 308. But you can run, if you got a good enough, like the 1 in 10 twist, you can run, I think 208 ELDs. If you need a big heavy bullet, I always recommended 308. Once I got a 6.5, I now pretty much exclusively recommend a 6.5 because in my shooting, the long range shooting, it is for the recoil that you get, the minimal amount of recoil you get with the distance that you get out of it. I find that to be the best caliber for me, very high BCs. So I'm going to recommend for you, I would definitely say I would go with 6.5 Creedmoor, especially if you're a new student, if you're new to long range shooting. The recoil is very, very manageable. And if you throw a brake on there, silencer, anything on like that, it definitely tames it even more, brings it down to something like shooting like a 223. So it's really nice. Other calibers, to think about if you're doing varmint shooting, you could go something like 243. There's so many calibers. Again, it's really hard for me to tell you what to get, but I typically try to pick something out in just about any application that it serves more than one purpose. Meaning I want available ammo that I can buy. I want available, because I reload for everything. I want to be able to buy, brass, primer, powder, all that stuff. It all goes into consideration. So my top general calibers are going to be like 223, 308, 6.5 Creedmoor, 300 Win Mag, 30-06, somewhere along those lines. So there's a couple new-ish calibers coming out, something like the 6.5 PRC, which looks very promising. 300 PRC, again, those are going to be your bigger guns. The ammo availability, I just haven't seen a ton of options. I basically see just Hornady. But with the 6.5 Creedmoor and 308, I typically see, somewhere between 5 to 10 different options on the shelf. So as a beginner, I'm going to recommend 6.5 first, 308 second now, mainly for ammo availability, cost, and that compared to recoil. So definitely, check out the caliber. I would do your research, figure out what it is that you want, what it is you need, and take the time and really think about it. If you don't really know what you want or don't really know what you need, I would recommend downloading like a free ballistic calculator. So if your aspect is, obviously if you're here, you want to get into some long range shooting, but maybe you want to second that with some hunting, right? So 6.5 Creedmoor would be a really good way to go on, deer, coyote, anything like that. Pigs, still a really good option, but it gets you a bullet or a cartridge that's very capable of getting out to like 1,400 yards fairly easily. Mile is pushing it, but it is capable of doing that as well. If you already kind of experienced and you're hunting some bigger animals, like bigger deer, goats, if you go up in the mountains, anything like that, and you're going to be shooting further, maybe you want to think about something like the 300 PRC, get a really big bullet, 300 Win Mag, somewhere along those lines. Again, with that, if you're hunting, you're most likely going to have a lighter gun, which means even more recoil on those bigger calibers. So you really got to think about that, kind of plan it out. So we'll end that part there. And because again, I can't really decide that for you. It's research you really have to do on your own, but I would definitely take your time with it, figure out what it is that you need, and somewhere what you want. Oh, I didn't finish what I was saying. Download a ballistic calculator. You can buy a box of ammunition or just go to the store, look it up, and it's going to have some of the ballistic data. So when it comes to long range shooting, this ballistic data on the box, we're going to centrally call it almost useless. But if you're comparing one box to another box, it's going to get you a general idea. It has all the information you're going to punch in, velocity. So this right here says 2695. It has a BC, G1 BC of 297, G7 351. So basically just punch that in and it's going to tell you essentially what you're shooting for is 1,350 feet per second as your maximum effective range as far as distance goes. Now, depending on the animal, you may need a certain amount of foot pounds. So then you're gonna look in that and get your foot pound information, but use a free ballistic calculator, type in the information off of here, and that's probably the best way just to compare bullet to bullet in kind of figure out what it is you want, what it is you need. So you start there, then look up your rifle, see what rifle you want, if they make it in the caliber that you want, and then kind of the same thing along with scopes. I can't pick out a scope for you, but we will definitely go over some different scopes in the next class. And for now, just do your research, figure out the caliber and the gun you want. Thank you.